Hi there! Welcome to Still Learning, the space where we celebrate growth in all its messy, beautiful, and raw forms. I'm your host, Fortune Fowle, and if you're here, you're right where you need to be, because here, we're embracing the beauty of being works in progress. Therefore, lean in, get comfortable, and let's grow together, one honest conversation at a time. Hi guys! Before we begin, I would first like to let you know that today's conversation includes discussions around sensitive topics such as grief, loss, and mental health. I understand that these subjects can be difficult, and I encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Please take care of yourself while listening, and feel free to pause or skip this episode if you need to. Thank you for being here, and let's continue on into this week's episode of Still Learning. Hi guys, I hope you guys this morning is off to a great start. If you guys couldn't tell, my tone right now isn't the most jovial that it could be, and it's honestly because the conversation that we're having today is one that is really difficult for me, and honestly why I'm going to skip all the formalities and the introductions and try to really just get straight into it, because though this conversation is one that is difficult for me to have, I know that it's also necessary for me to have, and necessary in the sense that I genuinely believe that this conversation can be really helpful and beneficial to anyone else who has been through what I've been through before and has experienced loss in this way, and just learning how to navigate that in life, and just how dealing with difficulty and loss in life, especially those that have such a significant impact in your being and your upbringing, it's really important to kind of hear that someone else has gone through it and that they have come out on the other side better from it, and how they've been able to just navigate and grow throughout the process. So I know that this conversation, though difficult, is a really good one to have today. Today, we're going to be talking about grief and dealing with grief in life. When starting this podcast and deciding what kind of conversations I wanted to have in this space, the Lord really put it on my heart to talk about grief at the very beginning of this podcast and curating it. And my vision for this podcast was one where there was just a lot of vulnerability, honesty, and truth, and humanity, and how there's a beauty in that, and how there's a beauty in being someone who is constantly growing and evolving, and that's how we are made to be. And saying that, if I'm going to really live out these visions of the podcast, it would require me to also have difficult conversations and really push my own boundaries. And it's probably why I avoided recording this kind of an episode for a while now, because of the level of vulnerability it requires from me. I don't necessarily love being vulnerable. I didn't really grow up in a way where vulnerability was seen as a strength. But it's definitely something I'm continuously learning and growing on how to do, because vulnerability isn't a weakness, it is a strength, and there's so much power in one's vulnerability and honoring other people's vulnerability. It is something that I'm constantly growing in, and I see how through this conversation today and me really putting myself out there, my hardships and difficulties, the side of myself that often, I'm still learning to trust that people actually want to see, allowing that to come to the forefront today. To be quite honest with you guys, I'm really leaning on the Lord and the Holy Spirit to lead me in this conversation, because I really don't know how I'm going to get through it without them. And I do realize I keep saying and. I'm so sorry. Genuinely a bit nervous right now in having this conversation. And I'm just praying, there I go again, saying and. I'm just praying that I don't cry, but if I do, that's okay. We're going to be just getting through this together. This subject matter in my life isn't one that I'm really open about. I mean, it's kind of hard to be open about the fact that I did lose my father. I lost him when I was 13 years old to multiple myeloma, which is a type of blood cancer. And it's something that has definitely impacted my life severely. It still shows up in different ways almost 8 years later now. my father's passing was never a secret. It's just something I never really been open to people about. And so honestly, hearing this, it might come as a surprise to some people. And for me, I'm like, I don't know how you necessarily bring that up. It's not necessarily a conversation starter, kind of dampens the mood a bit. So unless someone is asking me something where it leads to me having to be like, yeah, by the way, my dad passed away. Like, that is the only way that it really comes up. I've had people know me for years, and it'll be like 3 years later and they find out that my dad passed away. Like, genuinely. So, again, not necessarily a topic I'm very open about, because that time in my life, that season of my life, was really difficult. And to unpack everything that I went through during that time, we would be here for probably a whole week. It's a lot to process and deal with. So that's probably another reason why I'm not necessarily very open about this topic in my life, or not even a topic, but just this part of my life. And honestly, it's only by God's grace that the person I am today even exists, because when I think about the things I've been through in that time of my life, it's only God who saw me through them. People often just see the aftermath of the hardships that you go through in life, and they aren't always privy to being able to be with you in the thick of it. And so I think another reason why I really want to have this conversation today is because grief and losing a loved one, especially for me when I lost my father, how that really impacted my faith. And it's actually what led to me committing myself to Christ, giving my life to Christ. And that's such an interesting thing, because I think that there's two ways when you go through really difficult seasons of your life, especially things that are really out of your control, that can either pull you away from your faith or pull you closer to your faith. And for me, it brought me closer to my faith. The main reasoning for that is because, like I said, people often see the aftermath of what you've been through, and they're not always able to be in the thick of it with you. But the Lord was in the thick of it with me in that season of my life. The nights, the pain, the battles that I faced, God was there with me through it all. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that His goodness carried me through that really difficult time. And I honestly think that's why today I'm even able to really share and open up a bit to you guys about what I went through and how I'm navigating grief and what I've come to learn almost 8 years. And so today's conversation, I'll say this now, it might be all over the place. And so I apologize in advance. I might jump around, but I trust that it's still going to sound coherent by God's grace, and that it will all come together exactly the way it needs to. And I hope that if you're listening today and you're walking through grief or heartbreak or anything just really heavy and difficult in life, you're seen, you're loved, and you have hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I know that's really hard to believe, especially when you are in the thick of it. I know for me, it was really hard to ever see that there is light on the other side, that there was hope. Like, I was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. For a while, it was hard for me to think that good things really lasted. I was constantly waiting for the next bad thing to happen. And so I do understand it's difficult when you're in the thick of it. But I just want to encourage you to keep holding on, to keep going, to not give up, and that the best is still yet to come. And that might be hard to believe now, but my life is living proof if you need any example at all. So diving back into my sob story. And yes, if you hear me crack a few dark jokes along the way, just know it's a coping mechanism. There's no reason to be concerned. I just prefer to laugh than cry. And that's what just gets me through sometimes. I know there's definitely some of you guys who can resonate with that. So please don't be concerned. I'm just coping, and I'm a little nervous because this isn't something that I usually do or I'm as open with. So it's a learning thing for me. This is a nice little learning curve for me today. So please just bear with me. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer, I was 10 years old. And let me tell you something. I genuinely wouldn't wish cancer on my worst enemy. It is something that not only infects and attacks the individual's body, but it also infects and attacks the whole family. And during those years, I didn't tell anyone about what was going on in my life. Only my immediate family knew. I didn't really open up with any of my friends of what was going on. And again, I was a child then. And honestly, I'm surprised that I didn't say anything. I think because I was a child then, it's more expected for children to be more open in that way. But I am the kind of person who won't tell you I'm going through something until after I've gotten through it. Like, I will be really going through the trenches, and then I'll tell you 6 months after I've gotten out of it. Again, another way that I'm still learning to pivot in doing that in my life and letting people in during the hard times and asking for help and displaying that level of vulnerability. But back then, I really carried it quietly, and I never really even expressed to my family what I was going through during that time. Like, I really just kept being bottled up inside. Those 3 years, I would say, were genuinely a mental battle. I would see my dad have good days where he would seem so full of life again, and then I would watch it crash and burn. Hospital stays, chemo treatment, him not having any appetite, any energy, and constantly living in the cycle of hope rising and then hope crashing down again. It was definitely just such a screw up with the mind. And I don't even think I have yet to really understand the impact of those years, how they may manifest in my life now. I really have no idea because I was so young, and the things that I saw and witnessed during that time, I definitely don't think they didn't have some sort of an impact on me. And so I still don't think I fully understand how that might have played out for me or how it might still play out. It definitely isn't something that anyone should see. Someone who they love so much, just watching cancer really strip away that person that they love. And it's something that I can't even put into words. I commend my mother so much. She really was by my father's side 24/7, and she really exemplified to me those vows that you make when you marry someone through sickness and in health. That was everything that she embodied, and watching her love him and take care of him through all of that, seeing such faithfulness and just such a display of covenant love. Like, he was her husband, the love of her life, her best friend, and just seeing that was so beautiful yet heartbreaking to see, because I also saw how difficult it was for my mother seeing what was happening to my father. And towards the end of my father's life, because there was no longer any more ups and him getting better, it just became this decline the last 6 months, and he lost the ability to speak because the cancer metastasized, so it started spreading to major organs in his body and his brain. And then from there, the decline was just even faster. It just became really hard for me to visit my father in the hospital. I would frequently visit him because my mom would go every single day, and it just really hurt to see him like that. At some point, I don't even think that he may have necessarily recognized me, or if he did, I just wasn't sure if he was like present in the moment anymore. And now that I'm older and about to graduate nursing school, and I am in the medical field now, so I have a lot more further understanding of what was happening to my father during that time. When I was 10, 11, 12, I had no idea. But now I have a further understanding. I can attach like the medical terminology to what those moments were. But for me as a child, all I felt was so distant from him, and it was just really hard for me to see, especially because towards the end there was a lot of blood too. That was quite traumatizing to see. I don't think that I was really shielded from the severity and the impacts of the cancer on my father. I think it was really hard to even shield me from all of it, especially when you live with that person, you do life with that person. Like, you can't really shield me from those things, which is why I stated earlier, I still don't think I really understand the magnitude of what that time, what I witnessed, how much of an effect it has on me. Like, I don't think I still really understand it or see it. And hopefully one day I do and can work through any other residual trauma. But I think back sometime and I wish I had spent more time just being with my father. But the truth is, as a child, you don't think you're actually going to see someone you love die. I know there's like a whole Erikson growth development theory behind this, and kids really view and conceptualize death. It's not as tangible to them yet until you're like older, that idea. And so for me, despite knowing my dad had cancer and despite seeing how much it was impacting him as a child, the idea of him dying didn't really register to me. that he would one day no longer be here. And I remember during those times in life, and it's so hard to even talk about it now or thinking about it now, because it makes me wonder like what kind of state of mind I was, or how was I even in that state of a mind so young. And I just wish that was in my state of a mind, because I'm just like, you were such a child, you were a baby. I remember like during those times, I would pray so hard in the shower before bed. I would beg God to heal my dad. And I didn't even really know God personally yet. Like, I was raised Christian, but I was really just going to church because my mom made me go to church. Like, I didn't have a relationship with God or really know any of that, right? But I just knew enough to pray to him, to cry out to him, because that's what I've seen in my life growing up. And I remember I would even try to bargain with God, like asking him to heal my dad and take me aside, because I was like, I wanted my sisters to still have a father in their lives and for him to be able to see them get married. And I'm just like, what kind of 11-year-old, 12-year-old even thinks like that? And it's just heartbreaking to look back on now. And I just really wish that like I could hug younger me. I do. I really wish I could hug her, but also tell her like she is so strong and so resilient. I really don't know how I was able to get through and do the things that I did during that time and be where I'm at now. Like, it genuinely is only God. And when the day came when my dad passed away, and it really hit me when I entered that hospital room and seeing my dad, knowing that, he passed, that this was like a final thing, my response to that was not like crying at all. I actually shut down. And this was a trait that I had when I was younger and in my adolescence as well. And something that I, trying to work through and continuously working throughout therapy and life now that I'm older. But I shut down. I didn't cry, not then, not at the funeral either. I think it scared people, family, friends, family members, how numb I seemed. Like, there was no emotions for me. And it wasn't because I didn't process what happened. I just was not allowing myself to feel. I was just going through the motions. And there was like this switch in my mind, I think then, where I just became a really like logical, not allowing myself to feel. Certain circumstances happen after the fact that really led me to have to grow up quickly, mature quickly. And so I really compartmentalized what I was feeling because I didn't think that it was beneficial to me. I think I genuinely just didn't want to feel anything, because if I allow myself to feel something, it would swallow me whole. And shutting down was like this protective mechanism I believe I put for myself as a child, and allow me to be like in this survival mode and do things and show up in ways and that I don't think I would have been able to do if I allowed myself to fully feel the way that I felt. And it isn't until years later, now that I've really allowed myself to be honest about what I was going through and how I felt during that time, where I am really proud of myself. And shout out to God and therapy. I recommend therapy literally to everyone. Please go to therapy. There was a lot of things that I had to work out and heal from during that time of my life. Resentment, hurt, pain, a lot of different things, because those were the hardest years of my life. Nothing I've gone through since then. Like, I've been through some hardships the last 4 years of college, but the 3 years after my dad passed away were some of the hardest times in my life, and nothing can really compare to that time. And it's even hard to talk about now, because even though like I've healed and I've been made whole from those circumstances, it's just kind of mind-boggling who I was then and what I went through. And just really being honest about the fact that during that time, I really struggled a lot with depression, like badly, after he passed away. And I didn't really have the language for it back then. I really allowed school to be like the scapegoat for me, because when my dad passed away, I was just about to enter high school. And so it was just distraction for me. And I was grateful for high school and the friends that I had, because it kept me busy. It kept me surrounded by people, and I can just pretend like everything was perfect in my life. But when I wasn't in school, when I was alone, the weight of grief would suffocate me, and it made it really hard to get out of bed every day. And it made it really hard to want to live at all, to be honest. And the fact that I'm not crying right now, commendable, because it's just really hard for me to talk about this. But also, in a weird kind of twisted way, it might sound twisted, I'm grateful for what I went through. I know I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the person I am if I didn't go through what I went through. I wouldn't change a thing, honestly. Despite all of that, I wouldn't change a thing. Yet, even in the depths of that pain, I knew God was with me. I didn't have any theological understanding. I was 14, 15, 16. Like, I was very much in my adolescence of life and just going through the motions. A lot was happening. But I knew I wasn't alone, and I could feel God whispering to me, hold on, keep going, every single day. And I remember distinctly when I was 14, I had a really honest conversation with God. And it's funny to think about because I was nowhere near where I am now in my faith. Like, I believed in God, but like, because I was raised to believe in him, like, I didn't really have a personal belief or relationship with him yet. But I was just like, if you want me to keep going, you're gonna have to do it because I can't. And I really do think in that moment, God said, bet. Watch me, because somehow he did. He carried me through that first year. And when I survived that year, I realized there's no way I can survive another day without God. That ended up me surrendering my life to Christ. And it's so interesting how just the place of grief and pain that I was in the middle of my brokenness, God met me. He saw me. He carried me through it. And that's what led me to really come and desire to know him and give my life to him. And so it's why really, despite how difficult that time in my life, I would never want to change a thing, because it's what brought me to him. It's what made me acknowledge him and see him and understand that he has always seen me and always been with me. And though grief did not disappear after giving my life to Christ, still had 2 more years of difficulties and hardships, but I had more hope and I had more strength going into them, and I had more reassurance in them, because I was like, I may feel lonely, but I'm not alone. He is with me. And when I tell you the miracles, the signs, the prayers God answered, the way that there were so many things that were meant to break me, that were meant to break my family, that God did not allow to break us at all, but actually build us and restore us and bless us. Genuinely, it can only be God. Like, genuinely, without a doubt, undeniable, it could only be God. And for that, I am eternally grateful, because he just saw what I couldn't see. I think back to when he was telling me to keep holding on, to keep going, because I didn't see a future in sight. And quite honestly, I didn't want a future in sight, but God did. And even now, I think about it, I think about everything, and I'm like, wow, God, I didn't see myself here, but you did. And what a beautiful and loving God you are to walk me through it all. So now, almost 8 years later, because this year makes 8 years since my dad passed away, there are some truths that I've come to understand about grief and navigating it in your life. And people really would say to you, with time, it gets easier. And honestly, I have found that not to be true. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Grief does not go away. Like, it does not disappear. I really do think it just changes. It evolves, but it's always there. Despite so much time having gone by, Father's Day is still really hard for me. And it's not fun, because Father's Day is in June, and then the anniversary of his passing is July, and then we get a little bit of a reprieve in August, but then September is hard because my birthday is in September, but my dad's birthday is actually the day after mine. So I'm September 27th, he's September 28th. It was a running joke that I was his birthday gift when I was born. And so I really do try to celebrate all the moments in life. I think they're so worthy of celebrating, small and great. But for a really long time, it was hard for me to celebrate my birthday. It's still not even something I don't even think I really shared with my family, that it's still sometimes really hard for me to celebrate my birthday. And then the holidays, it's difficult. So like I said, grief, this whole with time, it gets easier. I wouldn't necessarily say it gets easier. I think you just learn how to live with it. You learn to let it soften you instead of harden you. And one of the ways that has helped me in doing so and not allowing my grief to harden me is something my therapist had me do a couple years ago. And she suggested that I write a letter to my dad on Father's Day, just writing out everything I loved and appreciated about him. And I did that, and I fully cried my eyes out, but it really did shift something within me. And it changed the way how I wanted to walk out and the language that I wanted to use surrounding my grief and no longer having my father in my life. And now when I talk about my dad, now when I tell someone he passed away, there isn't this painful ache anymore, because I no longer am talking about pain. I talk about the blessing it was to have him as a father, because my father was incredible, like an incredible person and human being. I love how now that I'm older and I look back on my lifetime, and just life with my dad, how much I get to now see him more as a person, as a human being, and not just as my father. He had a way of walking into a room and letting it up without even trying. He had a way of loving people that was just so unique to him. He just attracted people to him. He didn't even have to try. It was just who he was. He wasn't really affectionate. He's a classic Nigerian man, but I never once doubted my dad's love for me. He had a way of seeing me and my sisters and hearing us out and listening to us. And I love that he would watch WWE with me growing up and all these little shows that I watched growing up. And I love how attentive to detail he was to us, that I don't even think I realized until I was older how much he paid attention to our interests and our dislikes. And I just love being able to now talk about him, talk about the incredible person he was, and how there are so many amazing things and traits about who he was as a person and how he lived his life that I want to carry out in my own life and reflect and keep that legacy going within him. And I can't wait to tell my children about him and how amazing he was. My dad also lost his father at a really young age, at 10 years old. And so I didn't really know much about my grandfather. It wasn't something that my dad talked about or expressed. I think probably because he didn't even really get an opportunity to really process that himself when he was going through it, because he was the eldest of his family. So immediately he, at a really young age, at 10 years old, became like the head of the household and had to learn to provide for his mother and siblings. And, I can't imagine that at that age. So I don't even think he was ever really given the opportunity and chance to really process losing his father that young meant for him. But I have, and that is a blessing. And now I get to bring these memories and photos and videos and really talk about my father to my children. And so that though they may not know him in the physical sense, they will know him in all other ways, which is something I'm really grateful to be able to do. And that's a new way that I've been walking out my grief the last 2 years. Now it's just celebrating the life that he lived instead of mourning it. And it's not always easy. There's definitely still hard times, like I was mentioning earlier. And especially now, as graduation season approaches, it's really hard because it's a reminder that this is another big milestone that I won't have without him. I also think the reason why graduations are really hard for me and really make me think of my father is because my middle school graduation, my father wasn't able to attend. He was hospitalized. And that morning, I went to go visit him in the hospital with my mother. And my dad was not a crier. He did not cry. But he cried when he saw me because he just felt so heartbroken that he couldn't attend his youngest daughter, his baby's graduation. And so it's like another graduation he's missing. And I just think back to that moment. And so it has been hard. And I really have not been trying to think about it, because if I do, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fully break down. The last couple months, I really have just been thinking about if he would be proud of me and the woman that I am becoming, because the last time he saw me, I was a child, and now I am a young lady, from 13 to gonna be 22. That's so much time of growth and change that I've experienced, and I would love to hear his thoughts and opinions and what he would think of the person that I am now. I love to believe that he's proud of me. I would love to believe that. I do believe that. And recently, because God is so good, he's such a good father, truly a father to the fatherless. He gave me such a precious gift that I didn't even know I needed, and really testifies to how God answers prayers that we didn't even realize we prayed. So my sister, she recently had a dream, and I believe and know and seen biblically as well that God does speak to us through dreams. And I'm not going to get into the details of the dream because that is very personal and also very sacred. And there's certain things that I do cherish and like to keep private. But I will say this, that the essence of the dream that she had was that my dad was proud of me, that he saw me and he's proud of the woman I'm becoming. And when I got that message and she told me about it, I fully sobbed. Those times when you cry, and you cry so bad that you have to start catching your breath. You feel like you're losing your breath from how bad you're crying. I was crying so hard, and it was not out of sadness, but it was just in awe of how good God is, and that, he would really just care enough to allow me to receive that, especially so close to graduation, with that right around the corner, and just so intentional and kind and loving to me that way, because he didn't have to do that. It was just so powerful and impactful, and again, just a reminder for me that he's always been with me. And it makes me just so grateful, and just testify to love God. Like, I can shout it from the rooftops. And so that's where I am right now, guys. Listen, it's a journey. It's a process for sure. And whether you are someone who is fresh in this and dealing with grief, or a veteran in this dealing with grief, I really do hope that through this conversation today, you know that you're not alone. And even when the nights feel endless, even when the pain feels unbearable, and even when it feels like no one understands, God is with you. So let this conversation serve as both a reminder and encouragement that He is the Father to the fatherless, that though sorrow may come at night, joy comes in the morning. He is the husband to the widow. He is the comforter of the brokenhearted, and that through every storm, mountain, valley, and life, He walks with us. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Still Learning. I know today's conversation was a heavier one, but I really hope it reminded you that even in grief, even in loss, God is still good and you are never alone. So if you're carrying a heavy heart right now, just know it's not the end of your story. God is still writing beauty even from this place. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend. And if you're not already, make sure to follow @StillLearningPod on Instagram. I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue this conversation with you. If you're enjoying the podcast, leave a rating or review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as it helps others find this space and keep this community growing. Remember, what it is now is not what it will always be or what it will become. Stay encouraged, stay rooted in truth, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Still Learning.